Why might someone want to leave the Apple ecosystem? You know, especially if you have access to ADP, where you get end-to-end encryption in the Apple ecosystem, it's not a terrible place to be. It's actually really hard to get the same features in the Apple iCloud ecosystem with the integration, with all of the usability benefits, and some pretty solid security because, again, it's end-to-end encrypted. Now, there are still some problems with this, though. One, a lot of people don't like Apple's hardware, right? And that's a very subjective thing, or they don't like their software. And we all know notoriously that Apple locks you into their way of doing things. So if you're somebody who doesn't like Apple's way of doing things, it doesn't matter what the security or the benefits are going to be there or the usability. It's just not something you want a part of. The other reason is probably the big one, is that you are very trapped in Apple's ecosystem. If you ever want to leave, if you've ever tried to leave, you know how hard it is to do that. And it doesn't really interoperate with other services or other operating systems very nicely. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to do this. And they've decided they're going to do it by starting by migrating to Apple Notes to standard notes. This is a great place to start, and actually probably one of the easiest places to start, right? Like, Notes programs that are not Apple's tend to be very open. They're compatible on all operating systems, including iOS and Mac OS, or most of them in the web as well. Standard Notes is fantastic. They are, I think, acquired. It's kind of unclear. They never really specified, as far as I can tell, but there was some kind of partnership or acquisition with Proton. So you are getting a pretty big team behind Standard Notes, and I've heard a lot of people enjoy Standard Notes. It's open source and cross-compatible. A lot of people like NotesNook as well. Full disclosure, they sponsor like most of our videos, but they don't sponsor our streams. I don't have any reason to say that they're not a good option as well. They're open source, and they are also compatible on all operating systems. I think the two big choices I see people make for like Apple Notes alternatives is Standard Notes and NotesNook. So try them both. They're both, I think, free to try. I think Standard Notes is free to try, so try them out, see which one clicks better for you. I personally also really like Crypty. It's open source and only web-based, but it's a little bit different from Apple Notes in the way it works. So just try all three of them out and see which clicks best for you. The next thing they did is they migrated away from Apple Photos, and I think of all three of these, that's actually the toughest one. A lot of people have their lives in Apple Photos, and actually exporting your data and importing it into something else is pretty tough. And even Ente, you know, Ente is a really great service. They're open source, and it's like Apple Photos, Google Photos alternative with end-to-end encryption, really solid stuff. And I should add that Standard Notes and NotesNook and Crypty are also all end-to-end encrypted as well. Back for the notes section. But for the photos section, I don't even think the Ente team would have a hard time saying that Ente doesn't have all of the same usability and the features that you're going to find in something like Apple or Google Photos yet. So I will say that that's probably the toughest transition, and getting those over there is a huge win, so congrats. And then Apple Calendar, I think, is probably one of the easier ones because you can kind of just export your ICS files and then import them and then kind of just move any feeds over. I think the hardest part is now you have to use Proton Calendar, which I'm personally not thrilled with. I think it's pretty good for the privacy and security side of things, but if anyone's used it for like usability, I can't say it's been my favorite, but that's pretty personal preference. So they added some notes. They didn't realize how many features come with the free tier of Standard Notes, so definitely check that out if you enjoy them. Again, there's also NotesNook and Crypty as well if you don't like Standard Notes for whatever reason, but whatever works for you, that's kind of like what works best for you. They also seem to like Ente, and they also said they want to try out their self-hosting option. So this is one other thing that Apple will never let you do ever in the history of Infinity or whatever. You can actually own your own frickin' data, right? Like, you can host it on your own server, and it's all yours. You host it yourself. Pretty cool stuff. I personally haven't really seen many people who do self-host Ente and Standard Notes, so if you do go on that journey, please update us on a weekly wins, because that's not something I've heard many people talk about. Normally, people will self-host a NAS, like that's what I do, or they'll self-host Nextcloud, or they'll use some other ecosystem, so not a very common thing, so please let me know if that works for you. And that's also probably a cheaper way to get some more storage. So just wanted to give a massive congrats to Armored Pixels. Definitely go ahead and leave some confetti here. Let me see, can I do it? Yeah, I can. Oh yeah. Feel free to leave some confetti for Armored Pixels. I think it's probably the biggest win, just because like it's easy to write out like these three things, but if any of you have actually done any of these things before, you'll know that it's like a massive order, you know? Like, you have to go step by step, transfer all of your notes, make sure they all transfer properly, get used to a whole new interface. It's a lot of work. So big props, and I hope that this breakdown can help anybody who might be wanting to escape the Apple ecosystem for one reason or another, go on that journey. There are a lot of other parts of the Apple ecosystem that you would need to replace, so if that's something you want a dedicated video on, let me know. If there's enough demand for that, that's something I'm sure we can make happen. So this clip came from our main channel, Techlore, where we talk about digital rights and how to keep yourself and the people around you safe online, as well as just reclaiming a little bit more ownership. If you enjoy this content, want more nuance, and want a little bit more of a deep dive, check out our main channel here on the screen or in the description, and we'll see you there.